Welcome, my friends, to another edition of More Bad News, brought to you as always by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camels Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days, and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life. Well, my friends, uh, it's been another dreadful period of time. Nothing gets better. We're watching the government is shut down. People are starving. SNAP has been, stopped. And my rabbi is fasting, fasting for SNAP. That you want to do something, there's a website, Fasting for SNAP, and you can join. He's hoping to make this into global, as powerful as possible to put pressure on the government to restore SNAP. Um, People are being kidnapped off of our streets. I mean, how dreadful can it get? And you want to know, it can get even worse. This is the More Bad News channel. So I've been thinking this week. I usually have a show ready, and I just release it on Sunday morning. This is Sunday morning, and I'm flying by the seat of my pants. So it doesn't bode well for the channel. I got to tell you my viewer my views are going down. My subscription rate is approaching the 3K. It'll sink below 3K. I mean, I'm just right now, like last week, I had 70 views for this show, it's like. I am 78 and I'm approaching the end. So is this show approaching the end. But I'll carry on. I don't need, I just do it for myself anyway. I want you to know I have a whole bunch of tapes that I do, my basement tapes, which I don't release to anybody. They're just down there. I don't know. I just, feel like doing them and I do them. So I've been thinking a lot, though, this week about my pedagogy and about how I approach teaching and kind of thinking back about the evolution of my methodology, which was totally unique. Nobody has ever taught the way I taught, and nobody ever will again. You wouldn't get away with it. But I wrote something this week, and there's a paragraph here that I think really captures the essence of what I was doing. Nothing I said made any sense, and I argued that history made no sense, that progress was an illusion, that there was nothing to learn from the past that could in any way help us in the future, and anyway we had no future. Nothing I said made any sense, and that was on purpose. I was forcing them to think about the experience and try to make sense of it for themselves. My teaching philosophy owed a great debt to Martin Heidegger. Remember that Martin Heidegger was an ardent Nazi. And he was an ardent Nazi till the day he died. Sein und Zeit. This is not an easy read. Even if you have the English translation with extensive notes. Heidegger is a heavy load. He's not easy to understand. And yet I spent a lot of time trying to understand what many people thought was the greatest philosopher since Plato, Aristotle. He's up there in the pantheon. As Hannah Arendt described him after the war in an attempt to rehabilitate the Nazi, he should have been condemned for what he did. She said in New York, she introduced him to a group, and she said he was the secret king of philosophy. Um, there was something essential about what he taught me, having to do with the difference between thinking and learning. Learning is what most of the students do most of the time in college. They learn, they acquire information, and then they take tests and stuff. They prove that they have acquired the information. The students came into my class, they were widgets, and I was supposed to add something to the widget, and so that when it went out the class, I could show what exactly how I had improved the widget. But that is not my philosophy at all. My philosophy was based on the fact that what I wanted to do was to get them to think, and thinking and learning were entirely different things. Thinking only takes place in the present moment, and only takes place in the presence of a question that you don't have an answer to. You have to be confused to start thinking process, to figure it out. If I ask you how much is 2 plus 2, you don't think the answer is 4. You know it's 4, and you just pop it out. So in order to get my students to think, I had to present them with utter nonsense. And it went along with my philosophy, because I really didn't believe that history was of any use. I didn't believe that I was adding anything to the widgets that you could measure. I was presenting them with very negative material. Everything I said led to nowhere. I said, for example, that that when more doctors smoked Camels than any other cigarette, America was the greatest nation on the face of the earth. We had just defeated the Japanese and the Germans, and we were the wealthiest, most powerful nation on the face of the earth. And now, once we gave up cigarettes, we turned on tobacco, the product that made us a great nation, the product that without which the colonies would not have survived. What do you think would happen to us if we turned on tobacco? So my conclusion was, in order to make America great again, we have to really embrace the Camels challenge. We have to smoke Camels, not only for yourself, but for your country. I would go on rants like this that led to insanity. They were insane, crazy conclusions. I was taking material that normally the professor lays everything out and explains what it's supposed to mean to you and how you're supposed to interpret it. But when I dealt with Hitler before the war, before he had a bad reputation, and I had my students writing essays praising the Nazi regime. It wasn't difficult to do. They ran an anti-cancer campaign. There were all kinds of wonderful things. Hitler was Man of the Year in Time magazine. He was admired. The Nazis were admired all over the world. I want my students to understand that. I want them to understand why they were admired and why they continue to be admired. Same thing with Osama bin Laden in my terrorism class. I had my students nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. I said, millions and millions more people love Osama bin Laden and treasure Osama bin Laden than George W. Bush. He's a hero in the Muslim world among many people, because he attacked the center of the Satan, which was the United States. And he set out to destroy America, and he substantially did. With a single blow, he changed the world. I challenged my students. It was the original name for my show. My lectures quickly became a show. And the original name for the show was The Barry Mailer Show. The takeoff on the Mickey Mouse show, The Barry Mailer Show, the Barry. That's what I had in my head. Ridiculous. And then, but it morphed into Sympathy for the Devil. The show's name became Sympathy for the Devil. And the focus of the class, of each course, was to have sympathy for the devil. Not, every saint is a sinner, every cop is a criminal. what we want to do is have sympathy for evil. We want to understand evil in the world. Where does it come from? The question that you have is, not what's my name, but what is the nature of my game? What is the nature of evil? So there was some substance to it, but it was all presented in a way that forced students to think. And it had to be outrageous. So the first day of class was my best opportunity to shock, for shock and awe. And I would walk into the class the first day. I would never discuss the syllabus or the course itself. One day when the semester started, we hadn't resolved our contract negotiations, and there was a lot of tension in the air. And I walked into the class really angry. I said, "I'm not teaching until I get a contract. You don't get a syllabus until I get a contract." And so I told them that I was not going to teach them anything. And then I proceeded to tell them all the fundamentals of the course. And later they realized, first of all, I had already posted the syllabus, and all the things that they needed to have were all online. It was a mixed delivery class. So it was obvious that I was not serious, but I was, the first day of class, and it started off, the first words out of my mouth were foul. Eventually I had students who had the fuck count, which was they would count up how many times I had said fuck in a particular hour. And it was outrageous how many times. I mean, so it was wall to wall profanity. You walked into my lecture on terrorism, on American history, on colonial history, and it was wall to wall profanity with a professor who was clearly deranged. And the students, after the first day, I'm going to tell them, your grades, never mind your grades. I already gave you your grades. There's nothing you can do about your grades, So students, after the first class, would either run to the phone or to their class roommates and tell them about this absolutely insane professor that they have this semester. They call their parents and their cousins and and their friends, or they would go straight to the administration. They would go. I mean, the beginning of every semester, I walked into class. My mantra was, "Today is a good day to be fired," and I would be fired up. I'd walk into class, and I would just let it go. And the students would go. They would go to most of them went to the humanities department, to the chair of the humanities department. Some of them went to the dean. Some of them went to the provost, and some of them went to the president. They were to every semester. They were amazingly tolerant of me over the years. Looking back, I don't know how I survived, but I did, and no one else could possibly have done it. It's just not, you can't teach this way. So I realize now, looking back, that my pessimism about the future, my intuition that we had no future, and that there was no life after death, that once this planet hit extinction, everything would be lost. So there was no meaning to anything anymore. But I was used to that because in high school, when I first transitioned to an emotionally religious conversion experience, I was in yeshiva studying the Talmud. Lishma, there was no reason to do this. It didn't empower you, and it didn't give you anything. It wasn't training for anything. I wasn't training to be a rabbi. I was studying the Talmud for no other purpose than to study the Talmud because it was worth the squeeze. It was worthwhile. This is a worthwhile thing to spend your time with, just as I found this was worthwhile. And that taught me that Nazis can be worthwhile to listen to. Some of them have no brains at all, but some of them are quite intelligent. That's about it for this week's More Bad News. I posted a couple of shorts. I'll be back in a couple of weeks, regardless of how many people watch my show. Get down to 5. I mean, I don't care. So stay safe, and I will see you next week with more bad news.